Sounds good to me. I want to take this time to welcome everyone to our board member informational forum on program approval process.
I'm sorry, I'm gonna interrupt. I apologize. I'm gonna set the recording, but that is gonna also interrupt you in just a second.
Sure.
This
Want me to
meeting
start over?
is being recorded.
There you go. If you would like, I apologize.
No worries, no problem. This is Dr. Carol Mountain. I want to take this opportunity to welcome everyone to this special information session. Proposed program process for board members. It's an informational forum. We are very excited for this event, and we want to absolutely say thank you to all the people that have put into making this happen, including Marie Cordero. And we want to thank Solid for being willing to be the moderators during this discussion. I'd like to take this next minute to introduce our members of our board. Mr. John Durking is our Vice President. Alita Carpenter, Aisha Brown, Mr. Abraham Hill, Mr. Maxey is not here, Ms. Donna Norton, Ms. Tara Rooks, Ms. Melissa Rubalcava is not here, and Ms. Cheryl Turner. And welcome to all the people that are in the audience and are interested in this topic as much as we at the board are. At this time, I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Yamaguchi to introduce her board staff. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And actually, one small clarification. I'm afraid Ms. Rooks is actually not able to attend, but we are also excited to have you all join us. We think this is going to be a really lively and valuable discussion. We're really looking forward to the conversation. And with us today from the BVNPT staff, of course, our SNAC Marie Cordero, Beth DeYoung, Cindy Fairchild, Jessica Gomez, Faye Silverman, Judith McLeod, and Charlene De La Rosa, our mighty NECs. Vicki Lyman, our Assistant Executive Officer, Vicki Saavedra, who by day is our budget analyst and by night facilitates our WebEx and team meetings. Antoinette Wood, our Enforcement Chief. Doris Piers, our Legislation and Regulations Specialist. Maggie Archibald, our HR Liaison. And I believe that's everybody. If I overlooked anybody, I do apologize. But that's our board staff with you today.
And at this time, I'm going to ask Ms. Elizabeth Cornell from Solid to provide some instructions for this session.
Thank you. This is Elizabeth Cornell, the moderator for today's meeting, and I will provide a few instructions. First, if panelists can please mute the microphone when not speaking to avoid any background noise distractions throughout the meeting. Panelists, if you can also use the hand raising feature, and you will be called on when you have a question or comment or responding to a question from Dr. Mountain. Panelists, you are able to unmute yourself. So once we call on your hand raised feature that is through WebEx, we will call on you. And I'll give a quick overview of the meeting. The board will provide a presentation. Board members will initiate discussion with panel members. Panel members, you'll have 3 minutes to respond to the questions. The moderator, myself, will provide a 30-second time warning before your time is up, and more time will be granted if needed and with the permission of the board. The board at the end of, or towards the end of the meeting of the presentation, will open up for public comment to ensure that the entire program and process is presented in an effective manner. So that's why they'll leave it towards the end of the meeting. Members of the public, when that time comes, we will have instructions. Just please write your question and save it towards the end of the meeting, and you can present those comments and questions at that time. We will be using the public comment or the Q&A feature for public comments. The moderators, myself and my co-moderators, will manage the Q&A, and members of the public can participate by typing their comment or questions into that Q&A. And we, the moderators, will be reading them off, the questions and your comments, if time permits. Thank you.
Thank you for those instructions. At this time, Ms. Yamaguchi will review for us the BVMPT program approval process.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and again, welcome to all of you. We're very excited to have this conversation. Let me just, it is my role as executive officer to be the one that gets to tell the blunt and sometimes ugly truths about some things that are going on or have been going on. I think we need to examine our program approval process. I think it's fair to say that the original concepts and the original principles it was founded upon are sound. It's the methodologies and it's the actual mechanics, the logistics of our process that's created, I think, a number of, I would say, challenges. But let me back up just a bit. In 2018, when I started as executive officer, BVNPT had 4 remarkable full-time NECs and 2 absolutely amazing retired annuitant NECs staffing all of our education work. We didn't have a supervising NEC, and we had 1 vacant NEC position. We were able to fill that SNEC position in early 2019, and we filled the vacant NEC seat shortly thereafter. We did lose one of the 4 that had started with us to retirement. We were fortunate to hire a very qualified team member. In 2018 and 19, we requested through a budget change proposal an additional NEC position, which we were finally able to fill earlier this year. So right now, we have something like 50 or 60 programs on our program approval list. That's enormous and unwieldy, and unfortunately, this is not sustainable. Some programs have been on this list since 2019, and some of them even before. This problem didn't happen overnight, and I did want to say that, we were building the team up to break this cycle, and we'd had a lot of some plans in place that we had been thinking that 2020 was going to be the year that we were really able to correct and manage this. Well, 2020. So let me just, because we're going to get into, I think, the real details of the challenges we're facing and some of the thoughts we've been having and how to move forward. But just, in a big high level area, let me just say that I think it's safe for us to say that our system is backward, and it's based on a first in, first out process. There's no triaging and there's no needs assessment. Proposers are asked to wait for an undetermined and often very, very long time before they're assigned to an NEC to work. So programs that are ready, they'll wait, and they'll sometimes lose faculty, facilities, resources, momentum. And programs that are not ready, even after they're waiting a year or 2, but who move to the top of the line, we have a lot longer work process with them because they haven't started getting things ready. So there's a much longer and a much more in-depth work time with the NECs. So this all, we were already working on solutions and a plan forward, but I think a lot of you are aware, and certainly board members are abundantly aware, we had our sunset review hearing in the beginning of April, and the legislature pointed out that this was an absolutely unacceptable system, and we absolutely agree. So we need to examine what's going on here, how we can correct this, how we can make a better system while still making certain that we are making sure that all the programs that do business in the state of California are qualified to do so, and they're producing highly qualified candidates to become nurses and psych techs in our state. We want to make certain that all the consumers of California, including the students, by the way, in these programs, are protected by our work as regulators. So here's what we did. We took this very, very seriously, and we put together some thoughts on how to change the way we do this process. To a fast look, some of this might seem radically different, and it may be that this is kind of a oh my gosh, what in the world? Our initial thoughts on this are in the packet that was circulated. It's on our website, and this is an excerpt from the response that the board approved and provided to the legislature following our sunset review. As we move forward, we think we want everybody to know that as we redesign our approval process, we will be guided by the following. A new process must be fair, it must be transparent, it must be efficient, and it must serve the needs of all of California. So as I said, a lot may seem radically different, but I believe that as we work forward and as we discuss this, I think most of us will see that the actions follow much of the same tradition as we've always held. And the key difference is going to be the sequence of action. And with that, let me pause for questions from our board.
I see no raised hands, so continue.
Great. Okay, could we get to the next slide, please? So the NECs, the NECs are really unsung heroes, and I've said it a lot, and I will continue to say so. In the packet, again, we've included the most recent study of the work that goes into the NEC's key responsibilities, and it's broken out by the key big area functions. But for purposes of today and our move forward, we want to concentrate on how the NECs work on program approval. So generally speaking, and let me just use this as a ballpark, there's 168 working hours in 1 month, and I know that the NECs cheat and work more than that, but they're not supposed to. So I don't know this officially. And NECs generally assign something like 20-25 programs overall, the existing schools. And so the work that they do with them regard, the ongoing approvals, requests to admit students, the work on changes in facilities, faculty, curriculum. They'll work on scope of practice issues. They'll review documents. They'll investigate student complaints. They coordinate the director's forums that we have a couple times a year. They address policy matters, and they do so much more. And so based on that, and as I said, the grid that's in the packet really outlines the brass tacks of what goes into the program approval process. And so let's say that each of the NECs were assigned 2 new programs, proposed programs, to work on in addition to what they're already doing. And that each program, based on our estimate here, on a low end, if the program proposers are absolutely ready to move forward, it could take as few as 179 work hours to an excess of 309 hours. So again, this isn't sustainable. May I pause here if anybody has questions on this, because I think, as I said, these are real broad estimates, and I know that it's going to vary, but we asked the NECs, and they've been working on this on and off for several years now, that they would provide that real careful range of what a really good case scenario looks like, and what some of their absolute longest scenarios have entailed. And obviously the truth will always lie somewhere in between. So would there be any questions or comments on that yet?
Elaine, can you, for the benefit of the board and people that have never been through a review with an NEC, would it be possible for you, or maybe later even one of the NECs, to hit the highlights of what they're looking for when they do a review?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And Marie may want to correct me on this, but initially they'll look at um, just that quick proposal of, we want to form a program in Orange County, and so then they'll look at, the whole of the area. They'll look at, whatever things they already have lined up. Do you already have a place, a venue? Do you already have faculty and a program director lined up? Do you already have a curriculum or drafts of your policies and procedures? So they'll be looking at those things. And so right now, what's going on is when the NEC is initially assigned, they'll be sending this whole long list to either the program director, if she or he has already been appointed, and saying, here's what you need to produce. Let's work on this. And so there'll be this long conversation about, okay, well, here's our draft curriculum, and the NEC will work with them saying, okay, you're missing 10 hours in this kind of thing. You need to work on that, or this isn't going to work, and let me tell you why. They'll look at the policies and procedures, and this often requires multiple reviews and revisions, because that spans everything that the students need to know and the program needs to do business. The draft of, for example, the rules and requirements for the students, the attendance policies, the tuition, things like that. The NECs will look at the faculty applications, and they'll and then when they have a new program director, they will spend time with that new director and work with them, walk them through our practice acts, walk them through, here's some of the key responsibilities you need to be looking at. And basically making sure that, just if you have any questions about what you're about to take on, here I am. Essentially, and we what the relationship between the NEC and the programs is, a fairly long range consultative process and relationship as a whole. Ideally, this is kind of a lifelong thing. Well, lifelong being, 2 to 4 years really, but generally speaking, the NECs and their program directors get to know each other, but they also get to know the individual facets of the program at hand. And because obviously we want to make certain that things happen specifically to a program, so that there's not just this one size fits all approach to opening a nursing or PT program. We want them to fit the people involved, the area involved. So generally speaking, then, the whole process, it goes from reviewing these documents and then polishing them up. So there's tends to be several back and forths. The NEC will go make site inspections, and they'll evaluate all the resources that the program says that they will be putting together in terms of like clinical facilities, all their documents, all the faculty members. They'll be putting together a board report with an analysis and a recommendation for the board to consider. Those reports tend to be about 10, 12 pages, and usually come with photos. After they look at the place, they'll come back and they'll say, oh, there's problems with this facility, and we've given the program director and the owner a list of things that they must correct before we allow them to admit a class. So all these things and so many more go into the NEC's time working with these schools and these proposed schools. And I've just covered a vast amount, grossly overstated, of information on how this works. By the way, I wanted to reiterate, by the way, that this packet was sent out to participants, but it's also on our website, so you should be able to access that. So in that packet, of course, there's this information, the work study from the NECs, the excerpt from our sunset response, and some thoughts about a proposed rubric, I think, for applications. So that's the NEC's process. And again, so if there are any questions here, I'd be happy to respond. Okay. Great. So next slide, please. So this is where I get to that unpleasant and blunt conversation. Everything comes with a cost, and the board has reviewed and approved a number of iterations of fee policies for the school program since 2018, and possibly before. And the board is abundantly aware that our revenue stream isn't sustainable in the long term. And bluntly, we cannot stress this any more than this. The system, the whole BVNPT system, must be fair and sustainable, must be fiscally sound. And our board has been funded almost entirely by applicant and licensee fees up till now. That has to change because the NEC's work must be funded by the programs that they serve. Our hope is that the legislature will authorize this fee structure in the course of our sunset review. We've been working with a number of configurations, and we don't have final numbers to present, but we have some ballpark ideas. And I think as the Senate and the Assembly committees move a little bit down the process, we'll be putting together, I think, a more concrete proposal for that. And but as I said, I know board members, you've seen a number of drafts, and they're pretty similar in their approach and numbers, but essentially we expect to be able to, hopefully, we hope to be able to implement this in the coming year. Now, I'd be delighted to answer any questions on the fees and everything else I just roared through.
I am sure there's a lot of people that are having the question of if the fees are sliding scale. Is this just fees for opening a new program? Is this fees when the NECs come out to existing programs? And kind of what will that look like?
Oh, thank you. Thank you for the prompt. Yeah, well, the system we've designed, and again, you'll have to forgive me because I was speaking on the assumption from the board members. We, because we've had this discussions with the board members, but what we envision here is several kind of over fees, one being on program approval, one being on continuing approval, one being on provisional approval, and possibly some smaller ancillary fees, but nothing like a billable hours sort of structure where when the NEC goes out and then she works with you and then hands you a bill. But generally speaking, these fees are designed to be in effect for that cycle, so that if a program is approved for a 4-year cycle, the fee that they're paying. So for example, if you're, approved for that continuing approval, that 4-year cycle, that one fee covers your 4 years of work with our NEC and with the board. Generally speaking, we don't envision this being what we think is a very large and onerous level of funding, but I know for some smaller programs, it will be significant, and it may be some problematic. We don't look at, we're not, we've actually discussed the matter of a sliding scale or a differential between public and private and some other things. And we've come to the conclusion, and this was after a lot of analysis from the NECs, that really the work that they do does not vary, does not differ appreciably from public school to private school or big school to little school. Really, it matters. It varies more from continuous approval to provisional approval. Unfortunately, we don't, provisional approval is really an exception to the rule. There are very few, comparatively speaking, programs that are on provisional. So at this point, I think, again, we are, at this point, we believe that the best course of action is to have a universal, across the board fee structure, but probably in those big lumps of, new program, continued program, provisional programs. Let me pause here. So I'm guessing, though, that any questions that aren't coming from the board members or any of the panelists, if there are any questions being put into the chat, our moderators will probably come back to those, or worst case scenario, they will send them to us and we'll provide some written answers that we'll be able to share with the attendees. So
This is the
Dr. Mountain?
moderator. The Q&A feature was going to be open at the end of the meeting. Would you like me to open it at this time, though?
I'd rather it go toward the end, just to make sure that we can have the most opportunity for the panel.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so with that then, let me pass the baton over to Ms. Cordero and Mr. Young.
Okay, thank you, Elaine. This is Beth DeYoung. I'm one of the nursing education consultants here at the BVNPT. And first, I just want to thank everyone for being here today at the session. The NECs were really excited to have this open conversation, definitely about approving our current proposed program process. So I would like to share just a few common challenges that the NECs face. This is with our current process once a proposed program is assigned to an NEC from that waitlist. So these represent the most common challenges, but it's not limited to only these items. So next slide, please. Okay, so as you can see on the screen, there's some key challenges with proposed programs. So this again is when the NEC receives the program from the waitlist. They've been assigned to us. And the first one is delayed or no communication from the proposed program. There may be weeks without a response from the proposed program, even when the NEC has multiple attempts to the program to get that communication going. There could be many reasons. There's no blame here. I'm just saying that there is sometimes a delay with that communication. No program director identified. So we have had programs that cannot identify a director. So that hiring process of a director can possibly take weeks. Sometimes we've seen it months. And at this time, this is when the NEC is waiting for the program to submit the application for approval. No instructional plan created. This is the most time-consuming project. So developing a curriculum can take months, if not longer. And especially if the person that's responsible for creating this instructional plan, they have no prior experience or knowledge of the process, that could even increase that time. No program policies or methodologies created. Again, very time consuming for the proposed program. They have to develop each policy or methodology for the program prior to submitting it to the NEC for review. No location for the proposed program identified. So it can be very challenging for those proposed programs to identify a location, especially if it's their only program, whether it's a VN or PT, and if they're opening a location for the very first time. It's also costly paying for a location while they're on the waiting list to be approved, especially because they don't know when they're going to be assigned to an NEC. So this may be a reason why some of these proposed programs wait until being assigned to the NEC to start beginning their search for their location. That includes getting the contracts done, etc. So this can also delay that process. Minimal experience with regulatory requirements. So training and directing, which is one of the things that the NECs love to do with our directors, is really to help and assist them. But when we have to do this on how to complete and submit each required item requires a lot of time, can delay the process. So those who are not familiar with regulations, maybe they're a new director or not familiar with starting a new program, they do need extensive assistance throughout the entire process. Lack of clinical sites, this is to accomplish their program objectives. The NECs, again, they have to wait for the program to submit these applications for clinical sites, and this is for each term. So if the program's having difficulty identifying sites, then we just wait and stand by for them to obtain those sites, or maybe they're finding that some of the sites won't accept their students, or these sites may not be able to accomplish those clinical objectives. So there's many reasons for that, but that tends to be one of our challenges. The time period to obtain faculty. So again, these proposed programs usually do not want to obtain these faculty members until they're assigned. So this can cause that delay. It's very similar to the clinical sites. They have to wait until the program is assigned, and then they gather their faculty and start submitting the applications, but sometimes they haven't even identified any qualified candidates for approval. And lastly, but not least, is the funding to set up a program. This item can be very concerning, and that's considering the costs for opening a program and to operate the program. So we have seen this as well. And like I said, it's very concerning trying to talk to the director to figure out where their funding may come from and when that will happen. So these, again, are just some of the common items that we have identified, but there are others. And so, again, I just want to say thank you for being here to hear this and to have an open discussion about this. So I'll turn it over to Marie Cordero, who is our supervising nursing consultant.
Beth, before you go off, I just want to say thank you for this. You did a really great job of laying out what it is. But even directors have been directors for a while, and I confess I'm one of them. We spend a lot of time, or we take a lot of the nurse consultants' time filling out these forms, because when you don't do it all the time, it is very easy to not get the details quite right. And my hat's off to all the NECs who are so patient with all of us directors and really spend a lot of time guiding us. I want the board to understand just how much time the NECs spend, even with directors that have been doing it for a while, because there's just a lot of details involved.
Yes, Dr. Mountain, you're absolutely correct. And you're speaking on the continued approval process, which is very similar. It has a lot of the same requirements. And you're right, they don't do it, but every 4 years. So even the seasoned directors have a lot of questions during that. So it's even harder, I would say, for the proposed programs that have a brand new director that has never even been a director for an approved program.
I absolutely say yes to that.
Thank you, Carol and Beth. This is Marie Cordero. So as you see, as Beth said, these are some of the key challenges. Certainly the list is not comprehensive, but I'd just like to address a couple of issues. I think communication, we find, is extremely interesting, and we could do better on our part. So what we have started doing is we have started reaching out to all the programs on the list and asking them, are they still interested? And also we find that their information is not always correct. So that impedes communication also. So for example, we had, we sent out letters to all the proposed programs. We had 27 that we could not get a hold of. And we had, because their information was not correct on the original letter of intent to begin a proposed program. So therefore, we had to spend time to get that information and update our files. So what we are going to do is to meet very early on in, or earlier in the process, and have some training sessions with some of these administrators and directors, because we find minimal experience with regulatory requirements. And if any of you have lived or worked with the Nurse Practice Act or the it is very daunting. It can be very intimidating, and if you don't, and it's very confusing. And sometimes you get a program director who has never been a director, and they don't, and never dealt with the board and the regulations. So that can be very, very daunting for them and very confusing. So we plan to have much more intervention with the administrators and the program directors. Explain those things, do a little bit of training, have them ask questions, because when the program is assigned to the NEC, then it will make the process much smoother. So we do have some plans for that, and we are looking forward to this. And I think that you will find that Vicki Lyman is going to present next, and she has some very interesting, I think, and eye-opening information that you will find very fascinating, as we did when we went through this process. So do any board members have any questions for me? Okay, thank you.
Yes, this is Alita Carpenter. I have my hand up.
Oh, Alita, okay, it's Marie.
Yes. Yes. Hi, Marie. And forgive my lack of familiarity with the curriculum in these programs, but just based on my familiarity with teaching at the university, do we have a list of required courses with descriptions of each?
No, we do. Yes, that's a very good question, Alita. What we do have is we do have, first of all, a few things. Minimum requirement for hours, and it's broken down by theory and clinical. So there is a minimum requirement. We also have a minimum requirement for a pharmacology instruction. That's as far as the hours go. Then we have a list of topics which must be included in the curriculum. Then that program director, basically it's up to them to determine where they want to put those hours in those in that content area.
Mm.
And we don't have a universal curriculum. I'm just, if that's going to be your next question, which would solve a lot of problems, but that's for a whole nother board meeting.
Oh,
Marie, can
okay. I was just thinking it.
Can I say something to maybe help clear it up a little bit too? So Alita, when you have some choices as a director, when you have a program, like at the school I'm the director, our students take certain courses before they come into our program, and those are part of the BBNPT curriculum already. So like basic, we have them take psychology, people would call it psychology 101. That's not our number, but it's that basic psychology class. And I think the other one is the Marie, help me out here. Is it nutrition that they can take separately and human development? I think those are the three that we do, but there's some play for directors about how they can make sure that their students meet the requirements that are laid out in the Nurse Practice Act. Does that help?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
I see no other hands on the board.
This is the moderator. I do have Megan Jackson's hand up. I will unmute microphone right now.
Oh,
Ms.
hi, good
Jackson.
afternoon. Good afternoon. Thank you so much. I think I had more of a question or a curiosity. I was expecting that there'd be a little bit more process related concerns or challenges listed here, but having recently gone through the new program approval process, most of these challenges really just seem to reflect the program is ill prepared and not exactly prepared to start the program. It doesn't really seem to be process related issues from this list.
Marie, do you want me to assist with that?
Yes, please, Beth, that'd be great.
Okay, so thank you for your question, and you do make a very good point. The challenges that I spoke on earlier were from the point of assignment to NEC and on, and you're absolutely right. We are trying to go back a little bit for the processes once a program applies to be on the wait list for a program, which you will hear coming up a little bit more about that area of the wait time for the program and the concerns and the possible processes that they're going to be explaining. Does that help?
Hello, this is Larissa Ravzina. If you hear me, just from Gunic Academy of Medical Arts. I don't know, just like it's time to start discussion, but I do have a kind of a, probably suggestion, and I understand and I seen the pain where you guys have and meet all this kind of difficulties, and probably one of the thing which you may mandate, every 6 months from the people on the waiting list to renew the letter of intent on a just like a way that
I believe this might be a great segue for moving to the next area with the next slide, because I think this might help to get into that topic that everyone's asking about, is the wait list.
Hi, this is Vicki Lyman. I'm the Assistant Executive Officer here at the BVMPT. As always, we're very thankful for everybody joining us on the line today. If we can move to the next slide. Right now, this is a map of our existing programs. We have 153 total programs. The breakdown is 140 VN programs and 13 PT programs. Looking at this, you can see where the concentrations of programs are located. And you can also see the areas where we have no programs. The questions that you guys all have on your mind is what's next. So if we can go to the next slide, we're going to kind of talk about the what next. Elaine Yamaguchi had referred to a new way of doing business. One of the comments she made is that we are probably doing things backwards right now. And in an effort to right-side things, we are going to change the way we do business. Next slide, please. What we're looking at doing, and I do apologize for the typos. This wasn't the version you were supposed to see, and I usually offer $1 for every typo people catch, but I can't do that. I'd run out of money. But anyways, we need to be fair and equitable. And the only way that we can do that is have programs basically compete for a new program approval process with the BVMPT. This is a draft. The reason we're calling this a draft is because we want input from our board members, from our stakeholders, from our NECs, and anybody else that's interested in this process. We want to hear what you're thinking. But first, what we had to do is we had to put something down on paper to show you. Just here's an idea. We're not saying this is set in stone, but these are things that we're looking at to make sure that we have a fair and equitable distribution of educational programs within the state of California. So if we look at this is a new program rating matrix. If we look at the first area, we're looking at the program affordability. What is the cost of tuition for the students? Can people afford to do this? The next thing we're looking at is geography. I just put a map up there and it showed how programs are distributed throughout the state of California. There are some gaps and there are some saturation areas, which brings us to the next one, the saturation. In talking to the NECs, I had an interesting conversation where they said, well, we've got 2 different programs in the same building, and if you walk out onto the street corner in the LA area, you'll find a couple more programs. So there's a lot of saturation. The big question I have is, do our programs, current and proposed, are they engaging with their community partners? Do they have community partners? We've got a whole list of people we think would make good community partners for these types of programs. Clinical site availability. We know that that's always going to be a challenge, but we have to talk about it. The other thing, I think the most important thing, and 2 of our directors just brought it up randomly, is the readiness to start the program. If you're not ready to start the program, it's going to take a lot of time for the NECs to get you up and running. And that's time that could be spent on approving a program that's actually ready to start, where they say, yes, I have my proposed curriculums. Yes, I have my proposed policies. I've got a director. I've got a building. The other thing that we're looking at too is sustainability. Many of you remember that we had a college closed down unexpectedly, and we had to work with existing programs, the NECs, and everybody that would help us do a teach out. And thankfully, the program directors were very accommodating and it worked, and we're very thankful for that. But these are things that we need to look at in our new programs. Are you ready to go? Another thing that occurred when we started looking at everything, and one of the documents that's actually on the website, and it was talking about how the NECs spend their time. One of the questions I keep asking is, why does it take so long for an application for a faculty member or the program director to be approved? Is that something that we at the BVMPT need to look at and take a careful look at our applications and say, maybe it's on us. Maybe this application is not self-explanatory. So for me to look at that application, because I've never done this, I think I'm a cold reader, and I think I have a good opportunity to look at this and say, well, what does this mean? How do we help our potential program directors and faculty fill out these forms? So that's another thing that we're looking at. So when Elaine Yamaguchi talks about we're going to look at everything, she really means we're going to look at everything. Again, this is a draft. We are going to welcome your comments. We may not like them. You may not like what we have put before you, but we're going to work together on this, because that's the only way that we're going to get through this successfully. And you are our stakeholders. So that's kind of what we're looking at. We're going to have some more documents put up on the website pretty soon for you to look at. Marie or Beth will send out an email to all the program directors and any interested parties and let you know that here's some comments and we'd like your feedback, because as Elaine said, we want to be as transparent as possible, and we want to make sure that the programs that we're bringing in are sustainable and that the working relationship between the program and the NECs is a very positive, communicative relationship. Any questions from the board on anything that I've said?
See no raised hands.
Thank you. I will mute my mic. Do you want to move to the next slide and we will have the next group go?
Okay, so panel discussion later. Okay.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Vicki. So what I'd like to do, this is the time for our panel discussion, but first of all, I'd like to recognize and thank all the program directors. When I put the call out several weeks ago explaining what we were doing today and that we needed some assistance from program directors, boy, they really took the call and took the challenge. And I had so many program directors who volunteered to be on the panel. I'm sorry I couldn't have all of you. We tried to get a good representation of, you know, seasoned and new program directors. So just to let you know, we have our panel consist of, well, I'll tell you who they are and then I'll wait to introduce them because I think Solid has something to say before I do that. But there's a total of 7 panelists. There are 3 brand new program directors. When I mean brand new, they just went through the process. Their programs are very new within the last 3 months. So it's very interesting to hear what they have to say. Then there's 4 what I call seasoned directors, and those are directors that have had some 2 or 3 years and some way more years as a program director. And one of those seasoned program directors has a current program on the proposed program list. And one of those program directors, the seasoned program director, just completed what we call a program records survey. A program records survey is a similar regulatory document which all programs are required to complete to maintain their continued approval. And it's not as extensive as, of course, an initial approval, but it contains many of the documents and information that the NEC needs to complete that, that process. So, Elle, I think you have some guidelines before we start the panel.
Thank you. Yes, and it's just a repetition of some of the instructions that I gave at the beginning. Panel members will have 3 minutes to respond to the questions. I will provide a 30-second time warning before time is up, and if needed, more time will be granted with the permission from the board. Thank you.
Thank you. So I'd like to introduce our 7 panelists in alphabetical order. Efren Aquino is from Northern California Nursing Academy. We have Renee Amua from Contra Costa Medical Career College. We have Kimberly Cooper from Career Development Institute. We have Carla Gard from Bakersfield College. We have Megan Jackson from Mariah Medical College. We have Larissa Resvina from Gurnick Academy of Medical Arts. And we have Matthew Wanta from Sarah Costa Community College. So we're going to ask the panelists 3 questions. I'm just going to read all 3 of the questions. They're brief, and then I'll go back and we'll take 1 question at a time so that then the board can absorb that 1 at a time, and then if there's any questions, they can ask the panelist. So the first question, what did you like after hearing about this proposal? Number 2, what changes, if any, would improve the process? And number 3, would you like to share any personal experiences with submitting documents to comply with regulatory requirements during the proposed program process and/or the program records survey? And remember, I said the program records survey is a similar regulatory document, which all program directors are required to complete to maintain continued approval. So, question number 1 for the panelists. What did you like after hearing about this proposal? And you can go ahead and raise your hand. You can use the raised hand feature, and then the moderator will call upon you.
Larissa Regina, I really like the approach that at least we started to think about the improvement of this process. And I really appreciate the board members, Marie, personally you, and Elaine. So just like we started to think about that, this is absolutely amazing. The approach for this is different. If I could just start a little bit, so I could, just like start to give you some kind of my thoughts about that. Just like I really appreciate just like all approach in that, couple thing for this table, which was presented to us by Vicky. There's my opinion, again, I am with a BVNPT for 17 years. I believe I'm oldest program director, probably, comparable, probably Marie to you. So, so just like a couple things, what I feel this is going to be very beneficial. Number 1, I agree with geography and saturation is absolutely great, and clinical site availability, of course, the readiness of the program. Couple things what I'm thinking that is not fair for the private institution. Number 1 is a program affordability. In general, yes, affording the program, it's definitely no question about that. But the community colleges, they are pretty much subsidized by the government, by feds, and so on and so forth. They do not have to spend much money on the organizational of a whole educational process and stuff like that. We are liable. We are actually institutional accredited by APHIS national wise. We are liable for creating a lot of compliance process. And we are not just bringing the price tuition for this particular program. It's not like a ceiling and floor divided by 2. It's actually based on just like a very important spending. That is number 1. Number 2, what I just feel about one more thing about just community partners. If a jazz board gonna require from us as a private institution to have a supportive letter from community colleges, I truly believe we gonna.
Thank you. The time is up. I have muted the microphone. Next individual that had their hand, or the next individual who would like to speak is Renee Amua. Renee, I'm going to mute your microphone and you have 3 minutes to speak and you'll be provided a 30-second warning. Then we'll move on to Megan Jackson. Thank you. So Renee, I have unmuted your microphone.
Thank you. First of all, I just want to say that this whole process, I think, is fabulous. If we're going to move forward with really opening schools and providing the education for students for nursing in California. This is so transparent. So kudos to you guys for doing this. For me, there was a couple of things that stood out. I'm a brand new program director. We just received approval to start our very first VN program this summer. So a couple of things that I really liked in reading this, one was the targeted timeframes for each step. I know that, that will be a work in progress and goals, but I like that it was laid out and just having that hopefully, as an expectation for each phase. And then secondly, I love the communication policy. I think that's going to benefit everyone. It's going to benefit the workload of the NECs for chasing down programs who are not really ready and freeing them up to work with those of us who were ready to go. So I think that was a fabulous policy to add. And then in terms of the rubric, I really like the community partners part of the scoring. I think that, we are in a profession that serves others. And I know for our institution, we already work with community partners. We peer youth from the local medical high school, and we do different fundraisers and things, and we get our students involved in that. So I think that is a great thing to encourage that growth and that compassionate caregiver that we are trying to establish with our students. And that was it for me.
Thank you, Renee. Next individual, Megan Jackson. I will mute your microphone and you have 3 minutes.
Yes, I too am really glad to see that there's going to be some changes and refining of the process, having also, like Miss Renee, recently gone through it with my amazing NEC, Cindy Fairchild. But I did particularly like the idea of shifting towards this matrix that you have, so that it's more of a competition. I don't know if I love the term competition, but I think, so that you can really prioritize or triage those areas that have a greater need. Based on the slide that you all showed a little bit earlier, which I don't think was a part of the original packet, where you talked about a lot of the challenges that the NECs are seeing, since the vast majority of those really all, as I said, just seem to point back to readiness. I think it's great that this matrix captures that on the readiness to start the program section, and then the clinical site availability section. I know this is question number 2, but I would probably recommend that we increase the weight for those areas if that's the area that you're seeing a really huge deficiency. But the other thing that I really liked about the proposal is the transparency, like others have said. I think, keeping that information forthcoming and publishing, status updates on the website, and so that folks can see where they are in the queue and kind of have a clearer picture of what the path forward would look like for them for planning purposes. I think that's really helpful. And then I also really liked the communication expectations. I think that it's actually extremely generous. I think you guys had listed a 60-day turnaround time that the school would have to respond to your initial outreach. I think that's very generous. But nevertheless, I think it's great to have the communication expectations outlined. So again, for planning purposes. And that's it for me.
Thank you. Last call for anyone that would like to, or any of the panels participants that would like to comment on this question before we move on to the second question. Just feel free to raise your hand. Or if you're, okay, thank you, Matthew Wanta. I will unmute your microphone in just a moment. You'll have 3 minutes.
Okay, there we go. So I just wanted to add that I appreciate the communication. I think the rubrics are a good start. There's probably going to be a little revising as we go forward, but I think this is definitely a step in the right direction. I am a little experienced with this. So having anything for all forest directors to glean off of to help us help you is definitely a benefit across the board.
Thank you. And any additional participants, and by participants, I mean the panel participants, members of the public, you are able to participate at the end of the presentation. We will open it up for public comment. So unless I have any other of the panel participants, as we see listed on the slide at this moment, if we have any of them, if we don't have any of them, I apologize, we'll move forward to the next question.
Thank you. So the next question, number 2, what changes, if any, would improve the process?
This is the moderator. Panel participants, feel free to raise your hand. I believe Matthew Wanta, did you raise your hand? Or was that from last time?
No, I'm raising my hand on this on some of the things that can be improved.
Okay. Thank you.
I lost my place here, but I think, you know, with the director of nursing being established at the front end of it can be a little restricting to new schools and such. And also with the documentations and stuff, I had asked or requested several years now that there be a director form or a director page on the BVMPT site to help house those new forms that come out, any new guidelines, any new communication coming from NECs, and anything to help us do our jobs better and thus help the board do their job better would be my, I guess, 2 cents into helping improve the process overall. So there.
Thank you. Kimberly Cooper, I see your hand is up. And your microphone's unmuted. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you. Hello. I just wanted to kind of touch on, I think the process is great for new programs, have an organized approach to actually open up the NECs, you know, for the current programs as well when different needs arise. The part that, you know, kind of, we're a private school in Los Angeles, and after reading through the proposal, and at the beginning, I believe it was said like that no one size fits all type of thing. And then it was said that the sliding scale was kind of vetoed because the NECs put in the same amount of work for whether it's a small school or a large school or a public or a private, which is understood. However, you know, not all schools, whether the same amount of work is put in, not all schools can afford the amount of money that is being asked every 4 years for the program record survey. You know, when I read deeper into the proposal, there's an assumption that all private schools, you know, these numbers are based off of having 4 classes per year with 20 in each class and charging between $32,000 and $38,000. And I guess I'm just not sure where those numbers are coming from. You know, some programs don't have 4 classes a year. Some don't charge as much as $32,000. When we look at our gross and our net, it's much, much less than what was put on the proposal. So I feel like that's probably something that could be looked at a little bit further, and that maybe a sliding scale is something that we could consider. You know, that's how ABHES does it yearly, and the BPPE as well, where we would just submit some sort of financial record so that the schools can afford it, and we're not putting more nursing schools out of business. I mean, So yeah, I think that that pretty much sums it up. Thank you.
Thank you. Next individual, Megan Jackson, and then afterwards we have Renee Amua. So yes, Megan Jackson, I have unmuted your microphone. You have 3 minutes.
I agree with Kimberly's sentiments about the idea of a possible sliding scale being reconsidered. I did see that there was a mention about the possibility of need-based fee waivers also. So I would love it if that could be explored a little bit more prior to the implementation of any kind of formal fee structure, just to consider, those folks that really fall on outside of whatever population was used to come up with those numbers. But the other item that I wanted to mention also specifically was about the communication policy. It's very clear in outlining the turnaround time for the schools in terms of responsiveness to the board. I don't recall seeing that there was clear expectations on the other side, unless I misinterpreted it. But I think it'd be helpful to make sure that it's clear in terms of communication expectations, both on the responses that the schools are submitting to the board, but also on the time that the NECs would be getting back to the school as well after their submission. And just one other point, I did also, I'm not sure if we're going to have more discussion about this, but the note about diversification of staff being involved in some of the skills like other agencies do, like the BPPE, where we have, maybe non-clinical staff helping with some of the more, ancillary parts of the process to maybe alleviate some of the workload that's on the NECs. If there's things that can be done, like maybe faculty applications where it's really just, reviewing to determine whether or not all of the components of the packet are submitted, like maybe those kinds of things could help. I do recall there being a little bit of duplication in terms of some of the policies being reviewed as well, them having to be reviewed by the BPPE, and then also being reviewed again by the NECs. Maybe there's a little bit of room there to free up a little bit more bandwidth. So that's it for me.
Next individual, Renee, I have unmuted your microphone. You have 3 minutes.
Okay, thank you. So in general process, I think one of the things that, and granted it's been COVID and everybody knows what that monster has been like the past year, but I feel like facility applications could be reviewed. Specifically, they're a little, I think, overwhelming to facilities who already had so much going on. And I felt like that was a huge challenge, even if, they'd agreed to take students, they did a contract with the school, and then now they have this 3-page facility application, to go through. And I don't know, I just feel like that could be looked at and maybe simplified a little bit. The information is definitely important and necessary, but maybe there's another way to present it that isn't so overwhelming to facilities. And then in terms of the rubric, I really like the start of this, but there's a couple of things that I think concern me. One is the program affordability and the fact that it is scored so high in the rubric. And I'm not saying this just because I work at a private institution. I'm also looking at it from the point of a potential nursing student. I'm not sure why it's, and this might sound naive, but I'm not sure why it's such a negative if the tuition is higher. I get that as a student, I might be looking for a more affordable program, but I'm also looking for a concise process, the quickest way to get it done, maybe a schedule that fits in my family and work life, possibly online options that aren't in other schools that are maybe more affordable. So I think that could be looked at a little bit more. And in terms of the private versus public, I feel like that kind of separates it a lot. And I know as a private institution, if I'm calling, say, a county facility for clinical facilities, I'm actually the last that they're going to work with because they're required to work with public schools first. So I'm not sure that that falls into really making it fair and equitable when we're looking at affordability. The other thing is readiness to start the program. Is there somewhere that we can add like the actual facility, equipment, and resources that a applying program might have, and count that into that number for readiness to start? Thank you.
Thank you. Last call for any of the panel participants listed on the PowerPoint slide at this moment. If you would like to respond or comment on that second question, and if not, we will move forward to the last question.
Larissa Regina for the second question.
Thank you. So the last question would be, what would you like to share any personal experiences with submitting documents to comply with regulatory requirements during the proposed program process and/or, in one of our directors' case, the program records survey? So your own personal experience.
And I apologize for interrupting, Marie. I do have a friend, Aquino, that's, I believe you have a comment for the second question, correct?
Yes, I do have.
Thank you. Go ahead. You have 3 minutes, and this is regarding the second question. Okay.
Yes, definitely. So it's about changes. So I kind of agree with Renee from Contra Costa Medical Career College about the fees and all this kind of a thing, but as well some kind of a changes, guys. How about probably to have not just private and a community, but probably we really need psychiatric technicians programs. Look at just like how big funds our governor allocated for psychiatric tech, and we do not have much in California, the psychiatric technician programs. Probably we could just, this is a kind of a changes that we could see how it's, I don't know, just like prioritize the psychiatric technician programs and stuff like that. So I truly believe that it's a very going to be very helpful for California have more of that. Regarding the fees and stuff like that, again, I said that I agree with Renee. The situation is in our institution, since we're nationally accredited, all of these students do have a financial aid from the governor, from the government for they have a Pell Grant, FAFSA, and all this kind of a thing. I don't believe that their tuition in the end, they're not actually more than from the community college. If they more, that's yeah, I understand that, but it's maybe fit better for their schedule, for the family, for the kids, and so on and so forth. Thank you very much. I'm done with the second question.
Thank you. And now that the third question has been presented, panel participants, please raise your hand if you would like to comment or have a question. I do have, give me just a moment as I scroll. Megan Jackson, I will unmute your microphone at this moment. You have been unmuted.
Oh, I'm sorry. I think my hand was still raised from before, but I will say that, just my 2 cents about my personal experience. It was an extremely stressful process, kind of overlapping with all of the things that were happening globally. And we were also caught in the middle of the other NEC's retirement. And so I think our situation was a little bit atypical, but I just want to say Dr. Cindy Fairchild was a phenomenal asset and saving grace. And despite the challenges and, obviously, as we're talking about the barriers and, and difficulties with the process, she really made it palatable and she was a great source of encouragement. So I really appreciate her for her efforts and her insights throughout the entire process.
Thank you. Next individual we have, or panel participant, is Renee, and then we have Kimberly and Matthew. So Renee, go ahead. I haven't muted your microphone. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you. You guys touched on this in the beginning, the need for patience. And I have to say that that's something that I can't emphasize enough. The need for patience on both the NEC and the applicant's part throughout this process when you're learning it. But I was very lucky to have Jessica Gomez as my NEC. I cannot say enough about how patient she was with me. There were some documents, because I was new to this, and I'm also sort of a visual learner, so sometimes I couldn't really see it. That would go back and forth between us so many times, and she really was patient and explained things over and over again until I got it. And that was really helpful. And then in addition, she answers all my questions all the time. I'm the type of person that can have a lot of questions, and she was very, and still is, very open to that. And she emphasizes all the time that she'd rather me ask and we do something right than to hesitate and be doing something completely wrong. And I mean, ultimately, our program is so much better for the way that she worked with me. That professional relationship is so important between a program director and the NEC, and the BB and PT in general. Also, I just like to say that with the simulation edition, I love the checklist that was provided that helped get our simulation program going. It was really clear. It was helpful for implementing that methodology, into the program. And so I loved that. And again, Jessica was very knowledgeable about simulation in general from her experiences. And so that was very helpful.
I have a question. Thank you, Renee. We'll move on to Matthew and then Kimberly and a friend. So Matthew, go ahead.
I think Kim was before me, though.
I apologize. I probably got it out of order. So Kimberly, Matthew, and then a friend. So Kimberly, go ahead.
Thanks, Matthew. You definitely could have gone first, but thank you. So from listening to the other panel members, it sounds like we owe it to the NECs, because I was lucky enough to work with Beth DeYoung. We just had it was my first program record survey ever. I've been the director for a little over 3 years now. So this was my first one, and she made the process extremely easy. You know, a lot of information, obviously, that we have to get together for you guys. But I mean, it sounds like all of the NECs are extremely patient in working with us and making sure that we're getting the right documents. And honestly, everybody is just so willing to and want us to succeed and do well. And I mean, that makes all of this so much less stressful. I've been lucky enough to also work with Charlene Del Rosa just the past few months. And, you know, it made me a little nervous switching from a different NEC, but I can't say enough about her as well. Just getting you know, facilities approved and documents to her, and the response time is incredible. So yeah, I think that the NECs are making this a really smooth process for all of us, it sounds like. Thank you.
This is the moderator. Thank you, Kimberly. Then we'll move on to Matthew, a friend, and Carla Gard. I see you as well. So you'll go after a friend. So Matthew, please go ahead. You have 3 minutes.
All right, so I'd like to add my kudos to all the NECs. I think I've worked with every single one of them so far. I just finished up my second or third PRS, and so you know, as things go along, things change, documents change, we need to update things, new policies are brought forward. And so, even though I'm a little experienced, not overly experienced, but a little experienced, it still can be a little bit stressful. But with the NECs, even the new NEC that I have now, definitely a positive experience, much appreciated. My one note that I would like to push forward, I guess, towards changes, but associated with submitting PRS is having a Dropbox, so to speak, instead of trying to push things through emails, because sometimes our files are a little large and we have to do multiple emails for the same particular thing. So maybe establishing a Dropbox for the school during that PRS time, or even during the initial application, would be a positive point going forward. But again, thank you, all you NECs. Thank you. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Next up is a friend. Then we have Carla, and we also have Larissa. And if you can please lower your hand once you have spoken. Thank you. So, friend, you're next. 3 minutes.
All right. Thank you very much for having me. First, I'd like to thank our NEC, Ms. DeYoung, for the help and guidance that she was really extremely helpful in forming our program. And step by step, she guided us and we were able to form the program. So our school, this is our first, we are one of the newer one to have the program. So we were approved only last February. And with that, with our help, we are now able to start. The thing that I really appreciate is about communication with Ms. Beth Young. She absolutely is excellent as far as communication is concerned. I send her some questions, and within the hour, she will already have the answer. And I really appreciate that. So thank you very much. Now, the question, it's about when can a school start the program after an approval? Because that became a problem for us. We were supposed to start on a certain month, but that month was too near the approval time. So is there a time limit for starting the program after the approval? That is my question, first question. The second question is about facility and instructors. We submitted our facility schedule with the instructors and it was approved. The problem is the instructors are no longer available at this time. So if we're going to change the instructors from what is being submitted, are we going to submit it again? Okay, so that's the second question. And as far as change of curriculum is concerned, well, we are not in that position yet, but what is the reason why there should be a change in the curriculum, where in fact, the first time that they opened the program, the curriculum was already up.
Sir, the line was muted. The 3 minutes were up. Next is Carla. Carla, you have 3 minutes.
Apologize, I couldn't log in for the first two questions because I couldn't figure out how to unmute myself. But so I'm just going to make some general comments here. First of all, my experience with Dr. Fairchild, the one huge thing, I've been a director for 6 years now. The one huge thing that I've seen in the past over time is the communication and the timeliness of it, and even the tone of it. I am so appreciating Dr. Fairchild and her ability to get back to me quickly and be available to me for when I have those questions, and being patient and kind when I ask those questions that maybe I should already know. So I do see a huge difference with that. I love the communication that we're having the opportunity to sit with the board and share our needs and our perceptions as they are, because I do believe that the board's intent is good. And so the other thing that, as far as looking at the documents, there's some internal issues to consider. I know that with COVID, we are pushed into the online environment, and I would like for the board to consider allowing us to do some hybrid courses, mostly for the theory courses for our program for pharmacology, to do it part online, synchronous, not asynchronous, but synchronous, where it's an interactive. We have the technology, the tools, and the instructors that now have the ability to present the topics and the materials interactively with our students. And as likewise with our PEDS and our OB theory parts and the pharmacology for PEDS and OB, I would really like for the board to consider allowing us to do that. And I would love to be a pilot school if that policy, to help change that. Our activity and interaction with our students has been better. The students don't have to drive, and these students have a lot more diversity in the sense that they lack structure at home. They have a lot more problems and financial issues. So the online program piece of it was a lot better for our students. And I don't know if that's the same up and down the state, but I would like to really advocate that the board consider us making that change. The other thing I'm really worried about is that we're a public institution, and it says in the funding, it just says at a much lower, considerably lower fees. I need to know, as I'm anticipating making budgetary changes, because we only allow one cohort, we only admit one cohort of 30 a year. And so I've got to justify, is it worth, my program? And we have a stellar program. Our pass rates are 95 to 100% and have been forever. So when I'm looking at that, I'd like for the board to consider that, because I want to continue my VM program. So I think that was it on my list. Oh, I wanted to add, like with Matthew, I'd like a share drive for the PRS, because putting it on a jump drive or a thumb drive to mail it was kind of, I think it's just old school. So thank you very much. I appreciate the time to talk.
Thank you. And last individual had a hand up. Larissa, you have 3 minutes. You have been unmuted.
Thank you very much. First of all, the third question about the personal experience, and I just wanted to share, yeah, it was stressful, but I really wanted to express my appreciation to Marie, to Faye, Silverman. Yes, we went through retirement of one NSC. That was a very stressful situation, back and forth, but I really appreciate your support on a just situation. Really, it was actually Carla on my list as well. So opportunity for our programs to have synchronized, not asynchronized, but synchronized courses. For example, like a pharmacology, anatomy and physiology, nutrition, and something like that. So I really, really, really appreciate if it's going to be possible. During COVID situation, we actually had a very good experience in that, and just like equipment and everything, and people really appreciate this synchronized courses. Thank you very much. That's it, what I wanted to express. And I just wanted to tell you, when I review the all amount of hours which our NSC spent on a such and such item, gosh, I do have much more respect for those things. And we will try to work with our NSCs to facilitate them communication with our clinicals, try to give it to them as much more information as possible, like contact information right away, jumping on, you know, just like be between if no response from clinic or hospital. So we're trying to do our best. I have much more respect seeing what actually require from all of them. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Last call for any additional panel participants who would like to or has a question or a comment for this last question. If not, I'll turn it back over to Marie. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you, panelists. That was your comments were very, very much appreciated and very insightful. And certainly, we are open, as Vicki said. That's just a draft. We're open to, you know, any other, you know, comments, suggestions, and we hope we'll be able to come up with a great finished product. But I just want to mention something really quickly. Many of you are talking about hybrid and simulation. We will have a presentation tomorrow at our board meeting, and we will be talking about that. We know that is a big issue now. Simulation, hybrid, synchronous, asynchronous. So stay tuned for, or just join us at the board meeting tomorrow and you'll hear about it. So thank you very much. And now I think we want to see if any of the board members have any additional questions for the panelists.
Well, you know that Carol Mountain cannot not say something, right?
Go for it, Carol.
I have a couple of things I wanted to address. I really appreciate those people who said it would be nice if we had a Dropbox. Also, I think there's one of the things that's been really nice is that there's a link for the BRN called the Deans and Directors link, and it's you can write in with questions or you can send in documents to that link that you need to submit that are generalized documents, and that could certainly be something that maybe the BVMPT could consider as well. I thought that was a great suggestion. I did want to address Larissa, who brought up that the community college is subsidized. Yes, we do get funding from the government, but we only charge our students total, including uniforms, tuition, everything. To get a BN degree is less than $4,000. And our program runs extremely lean. And much of what we do is done by use of grants. And I have had the privilege of seeing Vernick Academy down in Fresno. It is beautiful, just an absolutely stellar facility. Many of the community colleges
Thank you.
don't look like that. So please keep in mind that we run very, very, very lean, even though we do get money from the government. And most of our students that we have, in fact, I would say 99% of our students are well below the poverty level. They are all getting the Promise Grant, which means that they make less than $24,000 a year. So we are serving a population of people that really needs to become VNs. It's just a different way of serving people, and it's why we do ask or look for a sliding scale. I've heard that from other community college directors here, because we do run very lean. So I just want to clarify that.
Hi, this is Cheryl Turner. And I have a question. As far as I know, board members do not typically get involved in the approval process other than to review the board reports, and at certain times we vote on certain issues. Does anyone have any suggestions for the board members about how they could become more involved or help to make the process more efficient?
Actually, Ms. Turner, this is Elaine Yamaguchi. If you wouldn't mind if I took a first swing at that, because I'm so glad you asked that. One of the issues that we were looking at as we've been trying to put together this scenario is exactly that we want to make certain that the board itself is actively involved. So what we're looking at, and this is just, again, remember, this is a draft for discussion, and this is the first time we're really thinking through this. But what we've had in mind is, I think you probably looked at the kind of draft scenario that we put in the packet is, we want to make certain that first there's a panel that scores applications first. That comes before the Education Practice Committee, who makes recommendations to the full board, so that there is that transparency, that accountability, that the full board is looking and making sure that all of these authorizations, all of these programs starting are reflective of the best interests. Because, as the board members are appointed as stewards for this board and its operations, we want to put that kind of more authority back in the hands of the board members. And this is, as I said, this is going to have to be worked out for logistics, but I think our intent right now is to make sure that that moves back to the board members, so that that final say and any kind of appeals process that we develop along the way, that's got to be firmly in the hands of the board members.
Very good. So we'll look forward to further discussion and on those details at some point. Sounds good. Thank you.
This is the moderator. Any other questions from the board?
This is Elijah Carpenter. I had my hand up. I didn't have any questions. I want to thank all of the panel participants for being here. I just wanted to comment that it's just so gratifying to hear how appreciative all of you are of our NECs. We really rely on them, and we couldn't be higher on each of them as individuals, but it's good to hear it from your side. Thank you so much.
Any additional questions, comments from the board? Okay, thank you. I'll pass it back to board staff.
Hi, this is Marie. I just wanted to make one comment. Some of you mentioned about submitting documents, and I know they're cumbersome and things like that, but we've just instituted the box, the iCloud, and so you'll be able to submit documents through that, and I think that will help quite a bit. In fact, we just started that just this month, so you'll be getting instructions from your NEC on how to submit documents. So I think that will help a lot, particularly in the PRS submissions. And instead of sending them here to the board, and then I have to upload them and let the NEC know, it's a very cumbersome process, and we realize that. So thank you for your patience, and we're trying, and of course we always appreciate all your comments. Thank you.
Marie, that was excellent and exciting news. What a great thing to deliver at this meeting. Thank you.
Always happy to excite everybody. Thank you, Carol.
Elaine, would you like to discuss some of the next steps that we could expect to see?
I could sure do that. You want to move to the next slide, please? And the next one. There we go. Well, actually, before let me preempt Dr. Mountain here. I did want to see if, because we do have some time left, I wondered if, if the moderator could reopen the queue, we could allow folks to type in some questions, and we could take them in the meantime, we'll give you a few minutes to type something in, but for the most part, what I want to do to just kind of sum up here is really provide some thoughts on the next steps, and really, I think more accurately, the time frame involved here. So, as you know, legislative, we are waiting for our reauthorization bill. It is, by the way, AB 1536, and has just been put in the appropriations suspense file. But generally speaking, over the next probably 2-3 months, the legislative staff and the members will be working with us and the board members, and probably taking in some time for some stakeholder outreach. I do fully intend and really want to put together some town halls or open houses online that we can continue this conversation a little bit. But like I said, the developments of what's going to actually take place and be put into law, that's going to be solidifying over, I think, I would say probably between now and, let's say, early August. Now, I would, by the way, I got to tell you, I was so impressed and so gratified by the remarks from our panelists, and I thank you all so very much for your time and your thoughtfulness here. And I also genuinely appreciate the expressions of appreciation for our NECs, who I think are absolute heroes, or sheroes even. And it's not a coincidence right now that it is actually right about Nurse Appreciation Month. It is actually a coincidence, but it just is such a nice happenstance. So let's talk a little bit about the fees, because I think I think there's some really interesting points being made, and I of course am very supportive, just innately, of public education, and that's just a me thing. But I recognize that the private programs are doing so much for this field. I think what if I may comment on the affordability aspect that we've been discussing. We put this in place, as a discussion point, because generally speaking, our psych techs and our LVNs don't go into very highly paid career positions, and we were looking at that, because if a student is not fortunate to get enough financial aid, either state or federal or local, to really cover the entirety of their education, if they are incurring a substantial amount of student debt, and we all hear about that a lot in the news now anyway, that if they're going to incur a large amount of debt and they're going into a job that only earns, say, $45,000 a year, I find that problematic, and it doesn't speak well to a person being able to stay in that line of work forever. So like I said, that was one of the reasons we were considering that. So it's nothing, we said, all of us have said over the course of today, and we'll continue to say, that nothing here today is a permanent or written up thing. This is an opening of conversation and discussion, and we want to hear your input. We want to hear your suggestions and recommendations. But I will tell you that at the end of the day, The board has the final say on what we will go forward with legislatively and in regulations. But we do want to hear you, and we will do our best to, I think, adapt to create a solution that works for everybody, or as many of us as we possibly can. So based on that, have we had anybody put in the queue?
This is the moderator. We have one so far. Dr. and I may mispronounce last name, McLeod. McLeod, sorry. Thank you. Has made all the difference for me as a new director.
Awesome.
Let me open up.
So
another comment just came in. Give me just a second. As they come in, they move for me. Okay. Just wanted to say a special thanks to my NEC, Cindy Fairchild, for all the support and quick response back. As a new director, coming to school with provisional approval, I wouldn't have been able to correct the violation if not for her help and patience. I'm very blessed to have an NEC like Cindy Fairchild, Dr. And I'll spell the last name because I can't pronounce it, Akoh. I have another comment. One of the most crucial things the BVMPT does is the turnarounds of ATTs. Currently, we have December graduates still waiting for approval to test. The biggest impediment to pass rates are delays from graduation to test dates. Have you considered staffing for redundancy, even if it means a small increase in fees or testing fees?
Ooh, that's a great question. It's a little off topic, but I'd be happy to talk a little bit about that. You know, I know that this has been an issue, and unfortunately, this isn't entirely an issue that the board has control over. As I think everybody knows, that the NCLEX is managed by a third-party vendor, Pearson VUE, and coordinated by the National Council for State Boards of Nursing. So one of the things that's happened over this past year, I think you all know that initially when the pandemic was taking effect, so many of the testing centers absolutely closed down, and then they gradually started reopening. And California has still not come all the way back to the capacity. Even all the facilities have not even come back to that partial capacity yet. So unfortunately, California has taken a little bit of a disadvantage in that. And so this has been a bad factor, because I know that a lot of students have commented, and a lot of schools have commented, that students have made, or rather graduates have made their appointments and then been notified at the very last minute that they got their appointments canceled. And this is, you know, we and our counterparts at BRN have been complaining at a regular basis to the National Council about this. I know that they are working with Pearson to make sure that the state facilities do start coming back to a better capacity. But point taken, you know, and I think it's I think that's fair. What else do we have?
This is the moderator. I'm back. Let me move forward. A Silverman is amazing NEC, and working with her is a pleasure. As a new Dawn, she makes it very easy to work with. I apologize there. As comments come in, my view gets shifted, so I apologize.
So actually, Elle, while you're processing, let me actually move back to another point that I remember from earlier that I think is actually extremely well taken, and that has to do with the communication policy. And I truly appreciate everybody's warm embrace of that. But you're absolutely right that it does need to be reflective. It needs to be both ways, and we will of course then put in some. You know, I think we have the unofficial our own internal policies about you're not letting this sit for longer than, but but I think that's fair. I think that putting together a public kind of threshold would be appropriate. We'll talk about that. So at this point, I wonder if there are any other points in the queue, but if not, maybe we could just hand this back to Dr. Mountain to have her provide some closing statements.
This is the moderator. We do have additional comments and questions in the queue. Did you want me to continue reading them? Or we can also save it for future reference.
If they're comments or are they questions?
I have comments. So just read the questions and skip through the comments.
Oh, if there's a lot, then maybe we should just, I will commit to us processing those. And if there are comments about, the proposals we have in front of us, the whole of the team will be looking at those and how to, move forward to the successor draft. But if there's anything urgent.
I will work with staff to see if there's anything urgent that needs to be addressed at this moment. Just a moment. Okay, Elaine, I just got confirmation. We'll move forward and Solid will provide BVMPT with all of the questions and comments in a future. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you all so much. With your indulgence, then I will pass this back to Dr. Mountain for her final thoughts here.
Thank you so much, Elaine. I too want to echo the sentiments of everyone else. And thank you so much to the directors who were willing to speak to us and to share their thoughts today. Thank you to all the NECs for all their hard work, and to all the board for putting this on and to be willing to provide this education to the board and to give all of us a chance to have some dialogue about how we can best provide for students, provide for the community, and make sure that people are getting their needs met. With that, I want to just also hats off to Elaine and Vicki and Marie and Beth for all their hard work putting this together. And once again to Solid for being willing to be our moderator so that we could all really enjoy the program. And I guess we call it adjournment at 3:03 p.m.
Thank you all. See you tomorrow.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, everybody.